Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the late start. Appreciate your patience. If you please rise, Reverend Shelton C. Rhodes with the Greater Zion Church of God in Christ will lead us in invocation. And Councilmember Schneider, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Every head bowed. Our Father, our God, Lord, we come to you once again to say thank you. Thank you for another day that you blessed us, that you blessed this council to come together. Lord, we just invoke your presence and your wisdom in every decision that is made on today on behalf of this great city. Bless each and every one of our leaders, and Lord, guide them and direct them in their decision making. We thank you for your wisdom from above, that's first pure and peaceful, gentle, and easily being treated. Thank you for all that you've done for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent Rhodes, always great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. First item on our agenda is public appearance. We are honored to have Dr. Vivian Baker, the superintendent of Belton Independent School District, with us this evening, and the chairman of the Board of Trustees or president of the Board of Trustees for Belton Independent School District, Randy Pittenger, with us. Thanks. Welcome. Good to have you. And Deputy Superintendent. Good.
Thank you, Mayor Jones.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mr. Blackburn and Tyndall City Council members, for allowing us to come and tell you. Our purpose tonight is to tell you about our upcoming November 3rd bond election and to give you a little bit of insight into the changes in the school district, where the growth by now that you all know that we are calling a bond election November 3rd. Our board has voted unanimously to call an election on November 3rd. And that, next slide please, that election begins with the building of a middle school will be phase one. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about our school district before I tell you the specifics of the bond election. As you may know, we are considered a fast growth school district because we have grown about 20% in the last 5 years. And the picture that I present to you tonight, are the areas in red, are the fast growth districts in this area. We have 197 square miles in the Belton ISD. And we have had an average of 325 students a year growth, over 1,600 in the last 5 years. So we're considered a fast growth school district. So with that comes the challenge of providing the resources, the facilities that are needed for our students to maintain our school district and to provide them what they need to learn. Next slide. We, at middle school, is our phase one. At middle school, we have had over 53% of our growth this year at the middle school level. We have a capacity of a little over 1,800 students in our two middle schools. One of those middle schools is in the city of Temple, and one of them is in the city of Belton. And with our capacity, we are already over capacity. It takes about 2 years to complete a middle school. And so we are proposing this November 3rd election because by the time our second graders are in middle school, we will have 2,700 students, and you see we'll be quite a bit over capacity if we have a capacity level of 1,800 right now. And in the next 10 years, we will have 3,000 students in middle school. So this is the time that we have proposed is right for a new middle school, and it will be phase one of this plan. Next slide. This is a slide to show that we, since we are a growing district, the way we are building schools is to hold bond elections. I've been superintendent since 2002, and since that time we've had 4 elections to build schools. Some of those were renovations, additions, changes to intermediate schools to make them middle schools, and one of them was to build a new elementary school, again, which was in the city of Temple. It was Tarver Elementary was our newest elementary school. And then with that, we made some other changes and renovations to our schools. Our highest level of our tax was $1.74, and that's been several years since we were at that level. Right now, our total tax rate is $1.41. So it has been higher at other times before the tax compression through the legislature. We have organized a committee of community members. Some of you served on with us on that committee, or you were guest speakers at that committee. Community members, teachers, parents. And we have worked for about the last 5-6 years since we've been having this projection of growth in our school district, so we could address it judiciously and with some thought. And the committee has been very active, and we began with values and guidelines for what we decided for our school district, and we especially are interested in maintaining our values of our school system, continuing to increase student achievement, safety, and then doing two growth projections, two professional outside growth projections. One was done in 2003 and one was done in 2008, and both of those projections are what we're relying on for this growth in our school system. So with that information, we went ahead and prioritized our district needs, and then came up, what I'm going to share with you tonight is our secondary 10-year facilities plan. It does not include the elementary schools that we know we will need also. Phase 1 is the proposal of a new middle school. In the lower end of the slide, you'll see the red dot. That middle school is at 190 and 121. And that middle school will sort of take the cork out of the two schools that are, and I'll show you.
Here, would you like a pointer? Here you go. There you go.
Okay, the middle school, I don't know which slide y'all are looking at. The middle schools right now, there's one right here, and there's one right here. I believe I'm pointing to the right place. And the one we're proposing is right here. That will relieve some of the growth in the middle of the school district. This area is just about 2 miles distance, and another 2 miles from this middle school to Lake Belton Middle School. And we know that we will relieve these two middle schools by building this middle school. And so that was the first proposal of phase 1, was a new middle school. And the next slide will show that in phase 2, we will need another middle school, and that is where we are proposing to build. That is land that we own at 2483 and 317, and it is in the city of Temple. It would be a school that will be built with core facilities for a high school, and with the intention that we will add the facilities as we need it into a high school, but the core facilities for the middle school will be built at that time when that middle school is proposed. That is phase 2. We don't have a date on it, but the next phase of this 10-year plan. The next slide. This high school plan will become this. So we will move the students from the middle school that's right here out to this school while we enlarge our high school to handle the increase in enrollment at the high school. We have 8,800 students in our school district right now. 35% of them live in the city of Temple. Our high school has over 2,400 students, and we know that the projection for the high school will maybe double in the next 10 years, so we will need room there. As this with the intention that this will be the second high school. The next phase of the program will be to expand and convert this middle school into a high school, and then build another middle school again in the northern part of the school district, which again is the city of Temple. because that is where the fastest growth is. So at the end of that phase 3, next slide, we will reopen, we will move these students back down to this middle school and make this a full high school. So we will have 2 traditional high schools. At this time, we have 2 traditional high schools, and we have 1 non-traditional high school, Wasco. We think our projections will be about 2,000 students in each of these high schools, one of them in the city of Belton and one of them in the city of Temple. As I said, right now, over 3,000 students live north of the Leon, and our projections show that we will double the number of schools we will have north of the Leon, many of them in the city of Temple, in the next 10 years. So at the end of that time, we'll have this 4th middle school at another location. 4 middle schools and 2 traditional high schools, and this is our projection for our secondary school plan. This new middle school, as I told you, will be located at the intersection of 121 and 190 and Avenue D. This is land that the school district has owned for about 15 years, I believe. And it will relieve the 2 middle schools that we have now, and they're overcrowding. And the total cost for the middle school, with all of the FF&E included in that, and any changes that we need to make to the landscaping, is $29 million. Next. The tax impact for this package is approximately 5.4 cents. We always estimate that on the higher end. Oftentimes we've been able to save and have a lower tax rate than that, and we were notified just yesterday that we did qualify for some of the federal stimulus money to perhaps be able to sell bonds at a lower interest rate. We're looking into 9 million of those bonds at a lower 0 to 0.5 interest rate, which may help us in the financing of these bonds. That is 5.4 cents 100 valuation, $54 per $100,000 home. So approximately $54 a year on a $100,000 home. The good thing, another good thing about this package is that we will be able to take advantage of the lower costs at this time and the interest rates at this time, yet the taxpayer won't feel that impact until 2011. And as you are well aware, for those voters who are 65 or older and have claimed their homestead exemption through the tax appraisal district, their taxes don't go up at all. They are frozen on their homestead. Early voting starts next week, and this is the first time our school district has ever had a bond election on a general election day. This is the county-run election. Early voting spots will be in places where you usually vote, like if you're going to vote in a presidential election. So this is combined with the other issues that are on the ballot, and early voting places will be in the annexes in Belton and in Temple, and I believe there's some in Killeen. And then early voting day, we brought these just to show you that we had this done, if you'll even share, just to see where the spots are. The area in red is the school district, and the area in blue is the city of Temple, just to show you how much of our school district does lie in the city of Temple. I think they're interesting maps, and we have them in our offices so people will know where to go vote on election day. But you see the area in blue encompasses a lot of our school district. I believe that's the last slide, isn't it? Early voting starts next week. If you have any questions, we would love to answer those. I left at your places. This is a mailer that will be going out next week, and this one has already gone out. This one's question and answer, and this one just shows the enrollment growth.
Council, questions for Dr. Baker? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention, and I do thank you very much for working with us as we've developed the land that we have purchased in the north part of our school district, and you all have been most gracious in working with us. and helping us plan for future growth. We appreciate that, and we certainly appreciate all of your city facilities that help us with our schools. They have always been very responsive to us, and thank you for that.
The next decade will be very exciting for both of us, I know. Together. Ms. Kincannon, thank you for being here, and Randy, always good to see you. Thanks. Thank you very much, Dr. Baker.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is a number of proclamations. And first proclamation that I have is for our planning department in recognizing Community Planning Month in the city of Temple. And so, Tim, if you and your staff and any planning and zoning commission members that we have with us would come forward. We recognize our professional staff and our volunteer staff as equally important in this role in our community. And so, welcome and thank you very much for being with us. I couldn't determine, Tim, if this was a contract or if this was a proclamation. So this is a little bit of a long one. But, whereas change is constant and affects Temple's neighbors, parks, trails, commercial and industrial areas. Whereas community planning and plans including the IH35 overlay, TMED, and the award-winning Plan Choices 08 can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. Whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents, property owners, and homeowner associations to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. Whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens, including the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Zoning Board of Adjustment, who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. Whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, which includes Brian Mabry, AICP, Senior Planner, and Tim Dolan, AICP, Planning Director, endorsed National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our settlements and environment. Whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the Temple's Planning and Zoning Commission, including Jack Barton, Ashley Dusick, Marvin Hurd, Derek Martin, Bert Pope, Chairman Mike Pilkington, Jamie Seacrest, James Stotts, and Vice Chair Alan Talley, and other members who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the City of Temple. Whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the professional Temple Planning and Zoning Department, Mary Maxfield, Tammy Lyerly, Leslie Evans, Brian Mabry, AICP, and Tim Dolan, AICP, and extend our heartfelt thanks for their continued support and effort for the public service by these professionals. And now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, do hereby proclaim October of 2009 as Community Planning Month in the City of Temple, Texas, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. In testimony whereof I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple this 15th day of October of 2009. Tim, thank you very much. Appreciate all the work you do, and there's plenty to do for us, isn't there? You know, it's a very exciting time. Thanks to all of you for being a part of planning and zoning, and you guys put in a lot of hours, and we appreciate that a great deal. So thank you very much. Let's give them a round. Thank you. I don't see Brian Vanacek. Is there anybody here representing SPJST? Well, let's go ahead and present this. There's no one here to receive it. We have a festival coming up this month, and so I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about the Czech Fest, Heritage Festival, and see lots of advertising on that going on for that this time. But whereas the month of October typically brings many festivals throughout the state of Texas to celebrate and honor the heritage of this state's Czech descendants. Whereas in primary period of migration from Czech lands, over 250,000 people of Czech ancestry arrived in Texas to make this place their home. Since that time, the number and stature of Czech descendants living in Texas has grown tremendously, and there are well over 1 million people living in all areas of the state and walks of life who can claim Czech heritage. Whereas Texans of Czech ancestry take great pride in sharing with the rest of us the state their contributions in the arts, music, literature, food, folklore, and many other fine customs that are part of Texas' rich, diverse culture. And whereas this pride is displayed annually in the month of October by Czech Heritage societies throughout the state as they stage various festivals, some of which have been passed down from generation to generation. And now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, do hereby proclaim October of 2009 as Czech Heritage Month in the City of Temple, Texas. And I encourage all citizens to recognize the significant and lasting contributions made to the entire state of Texas by the persons of Czech descent. In testimony whereof I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple this the 15th day of October of 2009. And just remind everybody that the festival is the 24th of September, and I believe it's at Miller Park this year. There's somebody from Parks Department, Kevin, is that right? It's at Miller?
Yes, the date, I think it's the 24th.
The 31st.
31st, it is? Okay. I thought everything else was on the 24th, so yeah, not that too. So 31st, thank you for that correction. And the following is to Keep Temple Beautiful. Tanya Gray, if you'll come forward, and so please. Oh, great. Oh, here's a picture taker. All right, okay. Tanya, welcome. Always glad to have you here. Tanya Gray is the Executive Director of Keep Temple Beautiful, and it's a pleasure to get to work with you, and you do a great job for our community. Thank you for all you do. Whereas the volunteer service is an investment in our future, bringing the differences that divide people by working together to solve problems, social and economic. Whereas Temple, Texas is fortunate to have many caring residents and citizens from surrounding cities who are willing to donate their valuable time and energy and talents to making a difference in the lives of others through volunteerism. Whereas the annual observance of Make a Difference Day encourages individuals to improve the lives of their fellow human beings by giving where there is a need, rebuilding what has been torn down, teaching where there is a desire to learn, and inspiring hope. Whereas Keep Temple Beautiful teaches people to be wise stewards of the environment. Whereas the Fifth Street Landscape Project is promoting awareness that encourages more creative, sustainable designs, which improves property values. And whereas Keep Temple Beautiful, in cooperation with local businesses, communities, and civic leaders, have joined together to promote an annual National Day of Doing Good that celebrates and strengthens the spirit of volunteer service. Now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, do hereby proclaim October the 24th of 2009 as Make a Difference Day in the City of Temple, Texas. And I encourage all Temple residents to celebrate the spirit of volunteer service while working to make a positive difference in our communities. In testimony whereof I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple this the 15th day of October of 2009. Thank you very much. Please express our appreciation to the board, and I tell them when I get to see them as well, for all the work that they do and help bring this to our community. So thank you.
Bothering me. If I may, if I can say a few words.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. Thank you, council members. I'd just like to inform everyone on October 24th, Make a Difference Day, Keep Temple Beautiful, along with outstanding partners, intend to plant 45 trees on South 5th Street from Waters Dairy to almost Highway 93. It will start on that Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'd like to extend great gratitude to the Parks Department because they are doing an overwhelming job. HEB has donated $10,000 for this project alone, and we thank them as well. We have military soldiers coming out from the 1st Medical Brigade, and they are actually donating a plaque in commemorative for fallen soldiers. So we thank them along with the Boy Scouts, and if you'd like to lend a hand on Make a Difference Day, please come out and join us. Thank you.
What time will it be out there?
9 a.m. to 11 a.m., so I'll see you at 9. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And Zoe, thanks for all the work you do to help coordinate all of that. And Thomas Baer's our chairman, and he's been out twisting arms and helping raise money for this project. And AGB contributed that $10,000 to us at the groundbreaking for their new distribution center. So they're a major player for us. And so the whole community's involved in this, and it's very, very exciting.
And the Parks guys, they are working very hard, so we truly thank them for all the hard work.
Good. Well, appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is an opportunity for public comment, and no one has signed up to speak this evening, so we'll move on through that particular item. Next is a public hearing. This item is to conduct a public hearing to receive comments on the possible voluntary annexation of a 1.148 acre tract of land located in the vicinity of FM 2305 in Buck Lane. Mr. Dolan.
Mayor and council, this aerial photograph shows the 1.15 acre tract that is shown in the yellow hatched area that is directly adjacent to the city limits. There are no residents living in this area, and this would be part of a development. As you can see, this area in here is already inside the city limits, and the property owner is planning to build a urban estate style single-family subdivision with a neighborhood service tract up here along 2305 that would get access to that area. This is an overview that's a little bit easier to see with the city limits already depicted in the red dashed lines in that area. The property owners, James and Jan Kent, seek the voluntary annexation. Again, there are no residents in this area. It is adjacent to the city limits. The service plan has been submitted for your review, which focuses on the different public services associated with water or wastewater, police, fire protection, parks, etc. The public hearing that you have today doesn't require any action. Again, the schedule that you've got moving forward is to be able to look at a public hearing that is going to be held at the Plains Zoning Commission on Monday the 19th to consider the zoning for the urban estate and the neighborhood services, and then also the plat associated with it. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Council, questions before we go into the public hearing? If there's none, this is our second public hearing. We held a public hearing yesterday morning on this item, and so I'll open the public hearing at this time. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comment. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Mr. Dolan, thank you very much, sir. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, consent, are considered to be routine by the City Council, and they may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a council member, and it will be considered separately. This is items 6A through K. Council, are there any items that you wish to be removed for individual consideration? If not, I'll entertain a motion on item 6.
Motion to approve items 6A through K.
We have motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second, further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next item is ordinance, first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a zoning change from single-family 2 district to 2-family district on property platted as lots 1 through 4, Block 4, West Ridge, Phase 9, located at the northeast corner of 205 Loop and Turley Drive. Mr. Dolan.
And again, the background for this information, Mayor and Council, is to try to extend some 2-family zoning. These descriptions almost sound synonymous, but the SF2 zoning is a single-family zoning district that allows only single-family. The 2F allows single-family and duplexes. And there are some duplexes already under construction out here. The aerial photograph shown in the area hatched in yellow is the subject tract. Again, this is a large view. This is a 2006 aerial imagery that we have, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's a 2008 that shows this area under construction. The houses there along 205 Loop that just show lots are built as duplexes now. And then there's property to the west that is already zoned 2F as well. This is the future land use and character plan that shows the medium density residential uses for this area. So the 2F zoning is appropriate in conformance with the future land use and character plan. The area fronts on Duke Drive and it's a local residential street shown in the thoroughfare plan, so the request complies with the thoroughfare plan. And for the availability of public facilities, the area is served already by sewer and water services. There, you can see the surrounding zoning. As you can see that the 2F to the east, and then also that band along 205 there. So it's conducive to existing and proposed two-family zoning for duplexes. Just to remind the commission, a lot of the setbacks are the same between SF2 and 2F, that you have a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet, 35-foot building height or 2.5 stories, and the same front, side, and rear yard setbacks of 25, 15 on a street side or 10 on the side, 5 on the side yard and 10 on the rear yard. There were 6 notices mailed out. We've only received 1 notice that recommended against the request, and that remains constant from what happened at the Planning and Zoning Commission. This would be the plat that's already been reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission for the 4 lots in question. They've already were platted as 4 lots, and these were just to be looked for the two-family zoning. Both Planning and Zoning Commission and staff recommended unanimous approval for this case since it conforms with the future land use and character plan, the thoroughfare plan, and the availability of public facilities. And we did have 1 member absent, so it was an 8-0 vote. I'd be glad to answer any questions that the council has. This is a public hearing, and an applicant is available to answer any questions the council also has.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Council, questions for Mr. Dolan or staff? There being none, this item requires a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comment. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading.
I move, recommend we accept it as proposed.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the first reading on the zoning change as described. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Linda?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider? Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 8 is also a first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance amending Section 7-100, use of land and buildings of the zoning ordinance to regulate the use of property for the on- and off-premise sale of alcoholic beverages. Mr. Dolan.
And again, Mayor and City Council, this is a public hearing. The idea is to receive a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission at its most recent meeting to look at the idea for the off-premises sale of uses of alcoholic beverages. And the major concern with the commission was the idea of looking at sales, since the proposition before voters for the early November election would potentially require the adding of a new use category. The other ideas for looking at the on-premises, and has been discussed, would be look at the idea of just some house cleaning for some definitions to make sure that they conform with the existing uses. And there's not been a recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission for the on-premises consumption of alcoholic beverages, but that is also scheduled for Monday's meeting, October the 19th, with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So they would be able to have comment for you for your second reading, potentially for your November 5th meeting. The public hearing today is essentially to move forward for the second reading on the 5th, and that essentially would be before any vote was canvassed from the results of the November 3rd election. Just to provide you some definitions, the column on the left talks about an existing definition for the alcoholic beverages sales for consumption off premises, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, through their review at the public hearing October the 5th, agreed with staff's request to try to break that out into two definitions, one for the off-premises consumption for beer and wine sales, and then also the off-premises consumption of a package store. And essentially, they remain the same, but understand the difference between the two types of uses, and essentially it would be for the sale of those commodities in unbroken original containers for off-premises consumption. Again, the existing land use table for the off-premises consumption remains intact, recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, a conditional use permit is required in the mixed use and neighborhood service districts for that. The difference why the mixed use looks where it's a different style with an underline was the closest I could come to say. When the mixed use district was recommended and approved by council, it would be that the CUP would be needed if it was adjacent to a residential use or residential district area. The dots essentially mean that the use is allowed by right, and so you could see the off-premise consumption would be allowed by right now in our zoning ordinance, and the general retail in the central area, and the commercial and the heavy industrial and the light industrial districts. We would like to try to recommend the revision to these land use tables to essentially break out those two uses and change the one definition for the off-premise consumption and focus on the idea for the beer and the wine store, keeping those uses intact. And then if you looked at the idea for an on-premises package store, the commission, per staff's request, would require a conditional use permit in those non-residential zoning districts of GR, CA, C, HI, and LI. And it was the idea to be able to try to be more conservative in the idea of these uses if they did become available. And the conditional use permit to remember the council, it would require a site plan that would need to be reviewed by both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. Advertisements would have to be made in the paper and also to the neighbors within 200 feet of any affected property. Also in the meeting October the 19th, we'll probably bring forward some site plan standards as was advertised for the meeting on the 19th to potentially bring some site design standards for these conditional uses. And it would be the type of things that would be looked at for proximity of those uses and parking requirements, lighting requirements, etc. Again, both Planning and Zoning Commission and the staff is recommending approval for the off-premises locations, but staff is looking and requesting comment from the council today on the on-premises sale. Essentially, it would be those four different zoning classifications that have been described in the use chart that break out the different percentages for the beverage consumption for on-premises and the food ratio, and we would potentially come back and look at revising a couple of those classifications after more time, and we would have those in place before any ballot measure passed, and that we'd ask you to call the public hearing today and take comments, close it, and then have a motion in a second and provide direction to staff. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that the council has regarding this issue. And then the off-premises ones remain the same for those non-residential districts for the conditional use permit for what I would describe as the recommended description of a package store.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Council questions or comments at this time? Mr. Dolan? Anything for Mr. Graham? I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on first reading of adopting the ordinance amending Section 7100 relating to the regulation of the property for on and off premise sale of alcoholic beverages.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lincoln?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 9 is a first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages, of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Temple, Texas, relating to the issuance of permits for the sale of alcoholic beverages and making non-substantive changes to reorganize the chapter and conform to state law. Mr. Grant.
Mayor and members of the council, this item is unrelated to the item we just discussed, but it is a cleanup, if you will, of Chapter 4 of our city code, which deals with alcoholic beverage sales, the issuance of permits, hours of operation, and things like that. And essentially what we're doing, it's been a number of years since we really went through and updated this section to conform with both our practices and state law. And what these changes do is just bring this code up to date to reflect current state law. And so just looking through the changes, they're, for the most part, are just following state law where we maybe had a conflict with some of the actual language in the state law, or deleting a couple provisions that are already in the alcoholic beverage code and we don't need them in our local ordinance. The one semi-substantive change is the term of permits that we're issuing. State law was amended on September 1st, effective on September 1st, and the state has begun issuing licenses for a 2-year term. Our current code section talked about a 1-year term, so we're bringing that up to date as well. But in all other respects, these changes reflect both state law and our current practices, and it's a house cleaning item, and we recommend your approval. First reading, it does require a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Council, question on this item? There being none, I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on this ordinance amending Chapter 4.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Aye.
Councilmember Stoll? Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 10 is a first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance amending Chapter 35, Taxation of the City Code to conform certain provisions therein relating to the local hotel occupancy tax to state law. Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. This is another housekeeping item, if you will. In Chapter 5 of the City Code, there are sections dealing with what is called the hotel occupancy tax. It is necessary at this time to remove several exemptions from our local hotel tax, occupancy tax provisions that are in conflict with current state law. The first of these relates to charitable and religious and educational organizations. The current code provision provides an exemption from the local hotel occupancy tax. When someone checks into a hotel and checks out, they pay an occupancy tax. There's a state element of that, and in some cases a local element of that. And under state law does give these charitable organizations an exemption from the state occupancy tax, and only that. It is silent on local. This particular provision, I've gone back and looked at our code. It's been in our code since at least 1983 and probably older than that, and I'm not quite sure whether there was once an exemption under that state law and it's been removed, or whether it was just silent and the assumption was that we could. But there's been a more recent AG opinion that is opined that cities have no authority to grant a local exemption. And even though we're a home rule city and we can usually do pretty much everything that the state tells us we can't in the area of taxation, that's read much more strictly, and you really need enabling authority to levy a tax or an exemption. So this is really a provision that the state is saying, no, this is their area of responsibility, and the AG has said we cannot exempt that from local. So that's the first change, and what we're proposing is this change by striking this language in 35.9C. Go ahead, please. The second change relates to also an exemption for hotel occupancy tax, the local tax paid by state employees. The state law until recently had provided that state agencies, their employees are exempt from both the state and local tax, but they've changed that now, so state employees actually, or agency employees, have to pay the tax and apply for a refund. So that's true of both state and local. So we are, on the next slide, and this is just telling you there is the process that's spelled out in the state law for getting a refund through that. And so we would, this proposed change, house cleaning, would clarify that by removing that exemption from 35(9)D for state agencies and their employees. And again, the enabling authority to get that refund is in the state law, and we don't need to repeat that in our local code. So recommend these two changes to you on first reading, and it does require a public hearing as well.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Council, any questions on this item? This item requires a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on item 10.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of the ordinance on taxation, Amendment 2. No further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter.
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Item 11 is to discuss the terms of a development agreement with Panda Temple Power LLC for the sale of affluent and potable water for the operation of an electric generation facility. We were posted for executive session on this item, and we were also posted in our workshop session, and I believe we took care of this business. So if there's nothing from Mr. Graham or Mr. Blackburn on this item, we've concluded that item. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our agenda. Thank you for your attendance at our council meeting this evening. We are adjourned.